Today we're moving from 1 Thessalonians to Colossians. Colossians 1, verses 11 through 20. Being strengthened with all power according to his glorious might, so that you may have great endurance and patience, and giving joyful thanks to the Father who has qualified you to share in the inheritance of his holy people in the kingdom of light. For he has rescued us from the dominion of darkness and brought us into the kingdom of the Son he loves, in whom we have redemption, the forgiveness of sins. The Son is the image of the invisible God, the firstborn over all creation. For in him all things were created, things in heaven and earth, visible and invisible. Whether thrones or powers or rulers or authorities, all things have been created through him and for him. He is before all things, and in him all things hold together. And he is the head of the body, the church. He is the beginning and the firstborn from among the dead, so that in everything he might have the supremacy. For God was pleased to have all his fullness dwell in him, and through him to reconcile to himself all things, whether things on earth or things in heaven, by making peace through his blood shed on the cross. Our soul needs as much strengthening as our body does. In some cases, even more so. It doesn't matter how much outer strength we have if we lack it internally. We can't strong-arm our way through conflicts, and we can't grit our teeth through trials. What we really need is endurance, patience, and joy. Those things come directly from the divine power of God. He is the one who gives us what we need to face the day. When conflict arises in your life, what does your typical arsenal consist of? Maybe you focus on pampering yourself to find comfort. Or maybe you meet problems head on with the strength of your will. Or maybe you try your best to hide until it's over. And if you're like me, you do all three. No matter what your tendencies are, what you really need is for God to strengthen your spirit. He is the only one who can give you what you need. Lean on him and trust that he will equip you with endurance, patience, and joy when you need it most. Our lives please God when they are characterized by these traits. We all know from experience, however, that staying steadfast through the circumstances and being patient with people is tough. It's often beyond our ability. The good news is that we aren't left alone with our own resources to meet the challenge. Paul reminds us that God's power is available. Believers can please God with endurance and patience as they are strengthened with all power according to his glorious might. Why did Paul want the Christians to have this power? Was it so they might go out and perform spectacular miracles? Was it so they might raise the dead and heal the sick and cast out demons? No. This power is needed so that the child of God may have all patience and long-suffering with joy. Now, this deserves careful attention. In parts of Christendom today, great emphasis is placed upon so-called miracles such as speaking in tongues and healing the sick and similar sensational acts. But there is a greater miracle than all of these in the age in which we live. A child of God suffering patiently and thanking God in the midst of the trial. I don't know about you, but I'm not real great at this. It is proper for a Christian to ask God to strengthen him to do God's will. God will do this. Sometimes it is immediate, and other times it is gradual, similar to the way a person strengthens their body physically. As we yield ourselves to God in trust and obedience, we will be strengthened to do his will. Believers please God when they are joyfully giving thanks to the Father for the blessings of salvation. Just as Paul was clear to spell out specific means to please God, he is equally clear about the blessings of salvation for which we are to give thanks. This time, we're given a list of 3 things. God qualified us, he rescued us, and he brought us into his kingdom. Excuse me. I don't know what's wrong with my nose. There. God the Father has qualified believers for sharing in the blessings of salvation. We don't qualify ourselves by our moral achievements or personal worthiness. In grace, God qualifies us when we trust Christ as the atoning sacrifice for our sin. That this salvation is ours by grace is seen in our participation in the inheritance. We don't do anything to earn inheritance. We're given it to us. It's given to us. We receive it. Being qualified is only one reason to be thankful. He has rescued us from the dominion of darkness. God delivered us from the ruling power of darkness, and the good news does not end there. God has also taken a positive step. He has brought us into the kingdom of the Son that he loves. God has transferred us. He has moved us from one place to another. He has taken us from Satan's dark realm and placed us into the bright light of Jesus' kingdom. God's work of salvation, for which believers are joyfully to give thanks, is pictured further with redemption and forgiveness. To redeem someone means to buy them back and then set them free. Jesus' death was the price paid to buy us back and set us free from sin. Because of Christ's death on our behalf, we are set free from both the penalty and the power of sin. Forgiveness parallels redemption. Forgive literally means to send away, to cancel. Through the death of Jesus, God has canceled the debt of our sin. It was a debt that we could never repay. But Jesus paid that debt for us. He has forgiven the debt. Paul warns us to know the truth about pleasing God so that we won't be victims of the well-disguised lies of those who might lead us astray. When Paul wrote to the Colossians, he was countering a clever company of false teachers who sought to replace the Colossians' enthusiastic devotion to Christ with only a mild approval of him. They didn't encourage anyone to forget Jesus altogether. They just said he wasn't the only show in town. According to the false teachers, Jesus got equal billing with a vast number of emanating spirits flowing from God. They said Jesus could be prominent, but he certainly wasn't preeminent. In contrast, Paul, along with telling believers the truth about the gospel and pleasing God, tells us the truth about Jesus. Jesus is the image of God. The word for image was used in Paul's time for likenesses placed on coins, portraits, or for statues. It carries the idea of correspondence to the original. It is nearest equivalent in ancient Greek to our modern photograph. Do you know what Abraham Lincoln looks like? We didn't live back then. We weren't alive when Abraham Lincoln toured Illinois and did his work here, and then even on up to Washington, D.C., but we know what he looks like. Even to this day, we know what he looks like. When we look at Jesus, we see the perfect representation of God. This verse and others like John 1:18. John 1:18 says, "No one has ever seen God, but the one and only Son, who is himself God, and the closest relationship with the Father has made him known," tells us that God is invisible. J.B. Phillips translates verse 15 in saying, "Christ is the visible expression of the invisible God." Hebrews 1:3 tells us that the Son is the radiance of God's glory and the exact representation of his being. Not only is Jesus the perfect picture of God, but he also holds the highest rank in the universe. Jesus is the firstborn over all creation. Firstborn is a term of rank more than it is a word of time. Psalms 89:27 says, "And I will appoint him to be my firstborn, the most exalted of the kings of the earth." Jesus is the firstborn, the highest rank in all of creation. He holds this rank because he is the creator of all things. There is nothing in the created order that Jesus did not create. John 1:3 tells us that through him, Jesus, all things were made. Without him, nothing was made that has been made. Because he is the creator, Jesus has absolute supremacy over all creation, including any spirit beings who are being worshipped by the local heretics. Since only God can be the creator, this means that Jesus, who is the perfect image of God, is even more than an image. He is divine. He is God. Jesus is sovereign over creation, but he is also sovereign over the church because he is the head. While scholars debate whether the head should be understood as origin or authority, both are certainly true of Jesus in his relationship to the church. Jesus began his church, and he is the source of life and vitality for it. The church is a body of believers who owe their allegiance to Jesus. The position of supremacy in everything, and particularly the church, belongs to Jesus because of his resurrection and the work of reconciliation. Jesus is also firstborn among the dead. This has nothing to do with time. Others preceded Jesus in rising from the dead, Lazarus, for example. But Jesus is first in rank. Others were raised only to die again. But Jesus was the first person to rise, never to die again. He is the first person to conquer death, and all the other resurrections are based on his. The glorious truth for us is this: because of his resurrection, we are assured of our own resurrection. Jesus has supremacy over all things because all of God's fullness resides in Jesus. Through Jesus, God is able to reconcile to himself all things. Reconciliation is the removal of hostility and the restoring of friendly relations to parties who have been at war. Paul also calls reconciliation making peace through his blood shed on the cross. What God has done is to move toward us, to restore harmony, patch things up, cease the hostilities, bury the hatchet, if you will, smoke the peace pipe, and heal the breach. I know that there's a lot going on in these verses 11 through 20, but I want to share with you a quote from C.S. Lewis. He says that we may note in passing that Jesus was never regarded as a mere moral teacher. He did not produce that effect on any of the people who actually met him. He produced mainly three effects: hatred, terror, or adoration. There was no trace of people expressing mild approval. Mild approval is what you give to a book you just read or to a movie that you just watched. It's nothing to get excited about. It's okay. It's casual. But it's impossible to give Jesus mild approval when you understand him. Jesus Christ can be ignored or adored, but you just can't give him mild approval. Jesus is our creator. He is our redeemer. And I didn't put my markers in here very well. Here we go. He is our creator. He's our redeemer. He's our judge. And you cannot be casual about that. Paul tells us in Colossians chapter 1 that Jesus has the right of absolute supremacy because of who he is and what he has done. Absolute supremacy. That means first in everything. That means Jesus deserves preeminence, not mere prominence in our lives. As believers, we must always be on guard against anything allowing to occupy the place in our lives which only Jesus deserves. We must also be on guard against the more subtle danger of allowing Jesus a place of equal standing along with the other things that clutter our lives. Often it's good things that can nudge Jesus to the side. Our children, our mates, our stuff, our jobs. None of these are bad within themselves. But if Jesus stands in line behind them or beside them, we're giving Jesus mild approval. We may ignore him and we may adore him, but mild approval? Never. So, as we go through our Thanksgiving month, we must remember these verses. Remember that God is in control, regardless of how it looks around us. And we know that because of Paul's words that convinced the Colossian church that through the supremacy of Christ, God loved them and was doing what was best for them. We know that those same words help to convince us today of those same things as well. And because of the wonderful things that God has done for us that we never deserve, but he does them for us anyway. All of our many blessings, we must give God the praise and glory that he truly, truly deserves as we go through this time that we have set aside for celebrating Thanksgiving today, and continue to do so each and every day of our lives. Pray with me, please. Father in heaven, you are such an amazing Father. You are such an amazing God. Help us to see. Help us to see through all the noise and the clutter and the stuff that we have to deal with every day. Help us to see the blessings that you give us, the blessings of your love for us, that you were willing to accept Christ's sacrifice for our sins. I don't deserve it, Father, but here you are, standing here with your arms wide open, ready to receive me, ready to receive us as your child. And Father, I thank you and I praise you for that. Be with us, Father, as we continue to worship you. Help us to never push you and Jesus to the side of our lives or even behind us. Help us to know and to remember that Jesus is the ultimate authority in our lives, and that he loves us and that we love him. I ask this in your Son's precious and heavenly holy name. Amen.